Should you ride with a high Y or a low V? What difference does it make when you shift the power line split up and down? These questions were roaming around in my head over the past months, and a quick search on the internet didn't make me much wiser. So I decided to dive into the subject to see what is best. I'll break this video down in a couple of segments. First, we'll go to the beach to see what changes the height of the Y split brings. After that, I'll sum up all the riding characteristics of the high Y and the low V, after which we'll talk a little bit about brand compatibility and what you should take care of when mixing kite and bar brands. Last, I'll tell you what I'll be changing on my riding setup and what could be good for you. Before we go to the beach, it's useful to know that the height of the Y split changes the way that the power lines pull on the tip of the kite. This changes the shape of the kite, including the arc, and that can come with different riding characteristics. Not all kites are created equal, and shifting the Y split will have more effect on some kites than others. Just keep in mind that your kite is designed for a certain Y split height. And changing this Y split height can have positive effects, but usually they also come with some negative effects. So it's all about finding the right balance. So we're at the beach, it's a good 25 knots. I'll be riding a 10 meter Core Nexus 4 kite on 22 meter lines with the brand new Core Sensor 4 bar. I've chosen this bar as it allows me to easily switch between a high Y, which is standard on the Core kites, to a low V by removing the power line splitter. So let's get started with the high Y configuration and get testing.
Steering my kite up and down a bit just to see how this kite reacts to steering input. Okay, next up I'll try a jump. Let's see how this goes. That's the power. Looking at the kite, seeing if it's opening up from the bottom or not. Nice. Next up is a kite loop, and I want to see how this kite turns throughout the loop. Loop. And down loop. I like this 10 meter, so smooth.
Okay, so that was the high Y setting, and this is how I usually ride, so it felt very familiar. Now let's switch it to a low V setup by removing the splitter and see how that goes. Okay, so from the bar we'll walk up to the Y split, where we will find this small little knob. So you'll see this little splitter. We can just unroll, unscrew the top, take one of the lines out, and then by pressing here on both sides, you can also pop that one out. And now successfully splitted the power line. Okay, so let's see how this kite feels when you steer it. And it's interesting, it's like there's a small delay in the steering. And when I pull the bar completely down, it actually seems like it wants to backstall a little bit more, so I might have to trim that out. Let's actually do that right now. Okay, that's closer to what it was before. Yeah, I'm curious. Let's see how this feels and how this goes.
Going to be riding and steering the kite up and down a little bit, see how this feels and what it does. And it seems to be turning a little bit more from the tip. Swing. All right. So it seems to open up slightly more. But we can do a kite loop as well and have a look what happens there. Nice.
Okay, so that is interesting. The differences are not as big as I would have imagined on this kite, but they are still there. Overall, I would say that the high Y is a bit more playful, where the low V is more stable and slower turning. It's all to describe. So what I'll do is I'm gonna go back out and try quite a bit more, and then I'll get back to you with the results. Pinpointing these changes proved to be a lot harder than I initially thought. So I decided to extend the testing session with multiple kites over different sessions. I tried out the 15 meter XR7, the 12 and 10 meter Pace Pro, the 10 and 8 meter Nexus 4 and also the 7 meter Section as a wave kite. Next to that, I decided to talk with Frank Eelfrich, who is the kite designer for Core Kiteboarding, to confirm the experiences that I had and what he thought about the subject. So let's get started. With the high Y, turns become more pivotal, basically meaning that the kite turns more around the center point. Because of this, the kite can turn tighter and quicker on the spot, generating less speed and power during the turn. This in turn creates a very playful feeling on the kite, and it's very forgiving. On the low V, the kite will turn more around the tip, creating a bigger loop radius where the kite generates more speed and power. Even though the kite flies faster, it still needs to cover more distance, and therefore it can actually feel like the kite turns a bit slower on the lower V. On the bar, you'll notice that the high Y feels a bit lighter with linear responses. This means that the moment that you start steering, that the steering pressure doesn't increase that much. And this also goes for pulling down the bar. So basically the pressure is more equal along the entire range. This can make it a little bit harder to feel what the kite is doing in the wind window, and it can make that you do accidental steering mistakes. On the other hand, it always feels the same, and that will decrease the chances of you getting tired arms. Now, if you have your bar all the way out, the kite will still have decent steering capabilities. When switching to a low V bar, the steering and bar pressure will increase the harder that you pull on the bar. This can give you a feeling of stability and control, as it's easier to understand what the kite is doing in the sky. But you might lose a little bit of your D-power range, and the steering when you have your bar all the way up will also decrease a little bit. The height of the power line split has an impact on the arc and shape of the kite. On a high Y, the tips of the kite will be pulled closer together, creating more of a compact C shape. This is partially what makes for the tighter turning radius. An additional benefit of this compact shape is that it's more stable in the sky and less prone to jellyfishing in high winds. When you lower the power line split, this allows the tips of the kite to open up, creating a kite with less arc. This can increase the hang time of the kite, but in stronger or gusty winds, you might also make it more unstable where the kite moves around a bit more. For the freestylers, a low V also tends to give the kite more pop and slack. It's important to note that you'll have to adjust the trim of your kite when you change the height of the Y split. When you go from a high Y to a low V, it's important to depower the kite a little bit as the power lines tend to get longer. It also goes the other way around. When you go from a low V bar to a high Y, you might be missing some power, so add a little bit of power to your kite to get it in a similar trim. If you're uncertain how to trim your kite, just go check out this video above. The length of your lines also has an impact on the effective height of the Y split. When riding shorter lines, your Y split will move closer to the kite with the added benefits and drawbacks. So, when riding 20 meter lines or shorter, I would suggest going to a low V bar to maintain original riding characteristics of the kite. So, what are the negative effects you might experience when playing around with this? On the high Y, your kite might close too much, negatively impacting power and lift. On a low V, your kite might open up a bit too much, creating more backstall and a kite that jellyfishes in stronger winds. Here is an overview comparing the high Y and low V characteristics. Keep in mind that some of the effects will be more noticeable than others, and they also vary from kite to kite. The high Y promotes playful riding with fast turning. This can also be nice for free ride, big air, wave and foiling. The low V makes the kite a bit less responsive and turns slower. This can be nice for unhooked freestyle, big air and old school. I often see people mixing up their kite and bar brands as they have a mixed quiver or they prefer one system over the other. This is something that can be done, but there are a few things you need to keep in mind. Make sure that your safety system is compatible. Most kites run with a flag out system, and most of these bars will be interchangeable. Take care though with fixed bridle kites, as these will need a bigger difference in power line length upon release in order to fully flag out. This means that the older core sensor free bar should not be used with the Pace or any other fixed bridle kites, as this could result in a partial flag out. The new core sensor 4 bar has been designed with a bigger power line difference and is fully compatible with all fixed bridle kites on the market that feature a flag out safety. Every brand has a specific Y-split height that they like to work with and that their kites are designed around. This is something to keep in mind if you want to match the original flying characteristics of the kite, and then just start experimenting from there. You also notice that certain kites have knots on the back lines and loops on the front lines, or the other way around, and this is important to match with your bar. Certain bars allow you to change the pigtails around, but for others you might have to get a conversion set. If you're looking for a bar that's highly adjustable, I can really recommend the new Core Sensor 4 bar. The Y-split height is adjustable and you can change the line length from 24 to 22, 20 or 18 meter lines by removing some of the extensions. Next to that, the pigtails are reversible, just in case that you're flying a different brand kite. In the past years, I've been riding 22 meter lines on a high Y for wave and twin tip sessions. This is something I've really enjoyed and probably continue doing, as I like the playful riding characteristics and the tight turning radius that the high Y provides. Especially on the wave, this is something I won't go away from, because I went to a low V with wave and I just didn't like the feeling of the kite on the 22 meter lines. I did, however, take 18 meter lines with a low V and that was quite fun and super playful. For twin tip riding, I'll only switch to a low V if I want more slack after the pop, or sometimes I'm riding a Nexus, because the Nexus actually opens up a little bit on the low V and turns more around the tip, creating more power in the loops, and this is something that I really enjoy on the twin tip. Another reason, or another scenario where I'll definitely be riding low V is obviously the short lines. Either twin tip, kite loops, or especially on the foil, where previously I wasn't able to ride a low V bar and that just closed the kite off a little bit too much. So there, having the original flying characteristics is amazing. So should you be changing your setup? If you have the option to adjust your Y-split, you can start experimenting with this, especially if you want a faster turning kite or a slower turning kite that has more bar feedback. Now that you have this information, you know a little bit what's going to change and tailor the kite to your needs. It might even be that it doesn't work with a high Y or a low V, and if you have multiple kites and just one bar to fly them all, you might know why your kite feels weird in the sky all of a sudden. So I hope this information helped you and you can do something with it. If you enjoyed it, please give me a like. Comment if you have any insights on it. I mean, I'm very open to suggesting. I don't know everything here, and this is just something that I've personally felt, and I'm very curious to hear what you think about this subject. So go testing, go experimenting. See you on the next one.